And we're live, Chris.
Hey, greetings everyone. CLA here from my studio, Mix LA in Tarzana, on this 1 billion degree day where the whole city is on fire with heat. Luckily, I'm in my cool studio. Unfortunately, the heat took out the power supply to my console, so hopefully that'll get fixed today so I can keep rocking and rolling. So I hope all of you enjoyed the videos I just made recently. So I'm here for an hour to jump in and answer all your questions. So let's get this party started. And I'm starting to see some people up on my chat window, but this is my place, my guitars, my console. It's just like my desk right here. Funny enough, I have a keyboard also. I have speakers right here and a setup. So when I'm producing records, a lot of times I am working right here on editing the song and doing keyboards. And, over here is where I do the heavy lifting for the mixing, but I do some of the pre-production here. So it's funny. As soon as the mix is done, I'm printing it. I'll open a session here and start, okay, I got new drums. I got some guitars, start putting it together. So, it's fun every time. So I am seeing some people pop up there. I'm seeing Rob Fernandez from Buddha Sound or Mix San Jose. Welcome aboard. I see Hit Shaper, Ralph Bayer. I see Cool Tube. Yay, Ralph Bayer, we do. Okay. Since you quickly comment on mixing down the tape. Okay. See Maxie Nicholas. Hello. And then I see Lock Stuff Band, Al from Switzerland here. Okay. That might be Alex, but I think it is. Anyway, I will watch for more questions popping up here. Let me scroll my bar down and see if I'm missing anything. But no, I am good. And so let's fire away and see if I get some questions to pop up on my stream here. There we go. Hello from Brazil. Greetings back into Brazil right now. Hope all is well down there. And Alex, that's me. Okay, well, Alex, I'll be calling you about that stuff I emailed you and hope to get back to Switzerland. And I see hello from Spain, Juan, and I see Richard, hi from Austria. Okay, Austria. And then, I have Sanitro Beats, hi from Chile. Well, hi back. I may end up putting my glasses on to see some of these because I'm older than dirt because I've mixed so many songs. Hello from the Netherlands, Pit Music. Okay, last time I was there was at Hilversum at Wieselord, way back in the 80s when most of you were still in your diapers. Not most of you, maybe a handful. So anyway, here we go. Hello from Germany, Edu G, and hello from Ecuador. Wow, we got the whole world going on here. Hey, Chris, please explain your print chain and process. So first question is from Charles Switchgood. I think that's been spelling it the right name. So let me get that question. And I mean, you got to remember, guys, I mix on a console. So I have the best summing mixer in the world, which means it's very simple. From the output of that summing mixer, it goes into a Focusrite Red compressor, okay, at 1.5 to 1. I don't compress the mix that much, all right? And then after that, it goes into a pair of Pultecs and a little bass, a little treble. Sometimes I change it based on the song. And I print right back to Pro Tools, which is all running at 96K. And it's that simple, okay? When I mix in the box, I may use my mix down plugin, but it's really that simple, Charles, because I'm mixing off an analog desk. So I see Duck the Bass, hi from Los Angeles. I see hello from Mexico. And I see Cool Tube. Hi, I'm a recording sound studio designer here in Germany. You have the awesome Vincent Van Hoff room. Yes, I do. Okay. And it's very important. Okay. I know a lot of you have to make your own rooms and it's challenging, but luckily enough, I was smart enough to buy an existing room built in the 80s, designed by Vincent Van Hoff. That's exactly like the clone of Studio A&M or Henson. And it's a great sounding room, floating floors, all the right acoustics. So I can't do no wrong sitting in the sweet spot here. So lucky to have that. And I have Weebkey, hi from Germany. Hello, George. George P, hello from London. Could you go through the way you set your delays being sent to the reverbs? I'm not sure I understood the routing. Well, that's pretty simple. If you have your delays returning on some faders, and this is in Pro Tools, then you have some sends off those faders, sending your delays to some reverb. And then you can bring those reverb returns up. Now, remember, those reverbs may be getting straight sends from drums, but also the tails of the reverb, like in my plugin Epic, is able to dissolve into the reverb. Think of delays can be so stark and blatantly plain in a mix, but when they're soaked in a little reverb, they kind of melt into the mix better. And that's how I do that. It's pretty simple. Do your awesome racks 6 interfere with the acoustics? They don't. As a matter of fact, because I can't tilt my screen, enough. Because they make the circle, it actually makes the room tighter. So, be honest with you, I've moved them back as my Atmos rig here. If I tilt the screen up, you'll see that I have these trusses going across the speakers on it. Of course, picture of my mom over there, and because I have my screen clamped to the desk, like this. But no, that works. So, funny enough, it makes the room even more intimate. Doesn't make a real reflection. What's your favorite? Okay, so I have pit music. What's your favorite technique for placing the vocal in the mix so it sits nicely? Well, we all know that if you use the right amount of compression, all of a sudden you don't have to move the fader. But the problem with doing that is then the breaths get loud. So you have to kind of prep the vocals to cut away the breaths, lower them, whatever. And the whole thing about getting the vocals to sit in the track better is to really compress it the right way so it literally sits there. Mixing is all about getting a big balance and then not having to ride a lot of stuff. So I think that's pit music. I think you're from the Netherlands, if I remember. What is your ad to print the master bus? Hey, dude, what is your ad? I don't know what the ad word means there. And then your room is, so I have another one say, CLA, your room is ready for Atmos. Yes, my room is set up for Atmos. Look, if you fall behind the trends, you fall behind everything, right? So it's all set 914, sounds killer. It's Ocean Way monitors. I have a whole separate system just for the Atmos, and I keep them separated. My console deals with the stereo, and then I have another computer system that just for playing Atmos and mixing Atmos. So, I'm not 100% sold on immersive just yet because I have too much work doing stereo. So let's back up to these questions, okay? The racks, techniques for placing a vocal. Then what's your ad to print the mix? Well, you'll come back to me again on that. I have Sasha Michi, I think that's right. Question about your mix down, if that's okay to ask. As far as I know, your Pultec on the mix is always set to 5 dB at 7. And yeah, something like that. That's right. When you open up the mix down plugin, that's exactly the preset you get is the bump on the low end and the bump on the top end. And that's unity gain in the plugin. You are correct. Rob Fernandez, what's your thought process about normalizing since options are mixed? You know what? It's very simple. You're talking about normalizing the mix. When I send a mix to clients, I pick a level I want every mix to be at, okay? So if you normalize the mix, that may change. So if you use the gain plugin, okay, and look at the RMS, you can pick, maybe it's minus 14, maybe it's minus 12. Minus 14 is kind of normalizing, so it's really up to you. I find that minus 12, just make everything minus 12. These are guide mixes, okay? These are your refs, your MP3s. Then at that point, send mastering something that's not normalized, so they have a little wiggle room. So that's what I would do. I have Richard here, Falke, Santa Monica song from Theory of a Dead Man. What a great piece of work you did on that one. So blessed to learn from you all. Well, a good song makes my job a whole lot easier, and thank you for that. So I have Cool Tube. Thank you. Is that a 914? Yes, it's a 914 Atmos certified room where you use like the dad mom as your volume control and a couple of Avid matrices for your playback. So, I had all the Dolby guys down here. We did it right. So It sounds great, especially when there's a video of something live. It's really good. Which DAW would you use if you couldn't use Pro Tools? Well, and that's from Sinitro Beats. Well, if I couldn't use Pro Tools, I'd build my own. I design my own. And you know, I think we live in a world where you have a lot of options. So, but Pro Tools is the de facto. Live it, love it, learn it, and don't let it control you. You control it. And I have the best assistant in the world, and no one can edit faster than him on Pro Tools. So, Sinitro, I hope that answers your question. Rolf Bayer, what volume do you work at? Well, at my age, I work at any volume. No, I listen very quiet. It's always the same volume every single day. I know when both volumes are at 12 noon, which is 12 noon dimmed. I make it work at that volume level. Because the louder it gets, the less you can last out the day. What's the frequency of the high Pultec bump? High Pultec bump. It's a 3K shelf, believe it or not. So it's really broad up there. It just adds presence, and it's only 3 dB on the Pultec. And that's from Ryan. Charles, hey Chris, do you send your snare and kick samples to the parallel drum bus? Oh, of course. The drums are a package, and they go to an extra compressor just to add a little more snap, a little more brightness. So yes, you got to remember, if you add samples, that blend always follows the same way. So that's how that works. So Sasha, can you talk about your parallel channels? In your mixing videos, you said you use parallel EQ and compression, but unfortunately you never went into detail except the drum crusher. So the detail is simple. You take your vocals and you literally just run them into a bunch of parallel channels. That is strictly to A, add volume, and B, to send effects from. So say you have your vocal on you have your vocals on 8 faders. Those 8 faders send to the pair next to it, okay? Those faders are up, and that means when you ride the vocal, you only have to ride it half as much because you're getting a power boost from the parallel. You understand? The parallel has nothing on it. No EQ, no compression. It just makes it louder, right? And then from that point, you can send the slap and delay and harmonizers, right? So I use that to send to more effects. This way, all the vocals can go to the slap, to the delay equally, and then I can use another parallel fader just for the long delays. So that's the vocal one. The drum one obviously is an EQ compressed pair of faders to help add some more stuff. And then also with if you're going to send something for the instruments, you can bring up another pair of faders and add some EQ. So that gives you like an ability to say, you know what, let me just EQ all the instruments a little bit so they merge right in. So it's kind of personal taste, right? So I hope that helps explain that part of it. So let's move down to CoolTube. Here you are. Besides acoustics, I wish I would become an awesome mix engineer too, like you. I followed everything you said, got the Pultec check, Focusrite, Bluetooth 20, that works. SSL, desk check, Rev 1. Well, I mean, it's not the gear, it's the ears, and it's the practice, okay? For you, the best thing you can do is to get your sweet spot set, get your volume set, start listening to mixes that you like and want to emulate, and be A-Bing those on the externals and say, oh yeah, maybe I can get my drums more like that. Oh, maybe I can get, my vocals more like that. You got to remember, I am 28,000 mixes in, so you got a little catching up to do. And then one more thing I see from CoolTube. How many types of reverb? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you have an M7 at 246. Wow, they're tough to come by. The Bluey is awesome. Glad you liked it. Do you think it's safe to buy a DRE 2000? Well, as long as you can return if it doesn't work. The shit's made out of unobtainium, so I have like 11 of them, and they're all bits and pieces and parts. So good luck with the old gear. It's just, if it works, keep it. Don't shut it off. But back to pit music. How do you monitor the low end when mixing on headphones? I don't mix on headphones ever. I wear headphones on the plane to listen to movies. I can't mix with headphones. It just doesn't work for me. That answers the pit question for pit music. Then I have C Studio. How many types of reverb do you use for a lead voice to create spaciousness without losing closeness. Well, whether you use 1, 2, 5, 6, or 10, it's all about just a little taste. So look at reverb as spice, salt, pepper, that too. So I usually can use 2 or 3 reverbs on a vocal. So it all depends on the song and how dense I want it to be. So then I have Chubba. Hey, Chris, do you deliberately increase the trim on the 4K to overload your line inputs into subtle distortion? Believe it or not, I don't do that. Remember, I will turn the line trims up. Sometimes on snare drum, because I want it to drive, but really it's how hard you hit the console for Pro Tools. And that makes the decision. So and then I see another question. Well, you're going to get subtle distortion anyway from the consoles, Chubba. So, and then I see Charles go, hey, Chris, can't wait to hear the new Green Day 1972. I know. We'll see when it comes out. But you guys are going to love it. It's a great record. Then I have Eric here. Hi, thanks for doing this. Do you set the levels in your mixes purely by ear, or do you use meters as well? You use the meters. Which instrument do you choose as reference? Well, I only use the meters for the left and right balancing. Of course, I use my ears to balance things out. So the meters just let me know if things are out of balance, and it helps. It helps if I have, say I have 8 faders, 8 meters, 8 sets of strings, or 4 pairs of strings. If I put them all look the same, at least when I solo them, I can find out what they're doing, so I can balance them from that point. So the meters are a great way to let you know who's dancing and who's playing at the time. So Maxine Nicholas, hey, what kind of treatments do you apply to bonus mics like a dick mic? Well, that's an interesting question. The whole thing with all these extra mics on drums is that sometimes it's just overkill. I really get my drum sound, and I just start pushing them up and adding them in and seeing, are they adding anything? Are they fucking with the phase? So I'll be honest with you, it all depends on the song and how much experimenting I want to do. But I really, unless it's a really great recorded mic, I mean, I kind of gets muted because of the phase problem sometimes. So that was from Nicholas. Yeah, I've seen the dick mic. This must mean it's right by your dick. I hope so. So Cool Tube, practice. Your question's practice. Do you still take students? Of course I do. With Mix with the Masters, we do seminars, full week seminars, 20 people, 25 people. We're going to be doing some seminars in France. I mean, to do a personal seminar here, it'd be very expensive for you because my time's pretty valuable and my schedule's pretty full. But that's always an option. That's something you find out through Mix with the Masters. We might have some sort of VIP process going on or one-on-one thing, but that's coming together. And Rolf says, what about recapping your analog gear? Yeah, what about it? Well, I have some good techs, and slowly but surely we go after them. So I did a whole bunch of 1176s, and man, it makes a big difference. So yeah, that's an endless job. So, but yeah, Cool Too. Practice just means, just keep at it. More mixes under your belt, the more you learn, the more mistakes you make, and the better you get. Alex Music there. I've got a question on parallel compression. What to use it, and when not to use it, and make the entire mix louder. Well, I mean, I really think it's personal taste. It's like, if you don't feel the drums are impacting enough, you can do some parallel. If you don't think the guitars are impacting enough, remember, your ears are going to make you dictate what you do there. Making the mix louder is not the important thing. Making the mix work's what's important. Loudness is not the win. Excitement in the song is what matters. You can always make it louder at the end, but remember that it's all about the quality of the mix and having some dynamics in there and some punch. So Las Vegas. Hey, look, I said Las Vegas up here. You mentioned you have a Sony Reverb. Yes, 11 of them. It's a DRE 2000 or 2001. They're made in the 80s. There might be a few still around. They are challenging. If you get one working, well, then it's a great sound, and it has never been emulated properly. So, do you have a favorite? I have Samantha Winter. Do you have a favorite way of using your SL creatively while mixing? I mean, it for me, it works one way. Okay, it's built a certain way, uh, and as you know, as time rolls on, I end up using. You know, if you want to look at creatively, yes, I'm using a combination of plugins and EQ. So I'm not just straight using all EQ. I use EQ in the box and EQ on the console. So it really works. You know, the best way is to use it for what it does best: automating your mix, snapshotting your mix, and making it sound good. So to me, it's the best workstation there is for mixing. So I know that's quick and simple, but it really is that easy. Um, so I have CoolTube. Hey, you're back again. It was so awesome to mix your files with Phil X and the drills. This is you and the MTMB. Can't wait to have the files from Chris on other sessions. Well, we'll figure that out for you. We'll get you something new. So Maxine, okay, you're welcome. And then I have snap a screw. Someone say Dick Mike. I know that is funny, but hey, I've seen Mike names really funny. So I got Roy Long. I'm curious, what is your console zero VU level going into Pro Tools? Is zero VU at the console, minus 18 be at the converter, minus 14? I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually minus 16 now. To check with my assistant, but we have about 4 or 5 dB wiggle room before it's hitting the roof. So we have some dynamic level there. So Pit Music, who is your favorite current mixer? Bob Clearmountain. Okay. Now I know he's not current mixer, but I mean, if you want to talk about current, I think Manny's done some amazing stuff and still does some amazing stuff. And I think he's got a great set of ears. I mean, look, I hear a lot of great stuff. I tend to go after Bob because for some reason he's just hard to keep down. But Manny, I mean, look, all our masters, I hear stuff they do, and I'm like overwhelmed with how great they are. So it's hard for me to just say one name, but Bob would be the first one. And are you producing any of your own music? Watching the Beto video, you play a lot of instruments. Yes, I do, Rob. I play everything: guitars, drums, keyboards, whatever. And yes, I'm producing a lot of stuff. And it's more and more is coming out, and I'm part co-writer. I sing on it, I play on it. Artist Kurt Dimer, I help co-write the songs with Phil X and play on them. I've done Kiefer Sutherland, Dorothy, a band named Temp, whole bunch of new things coming, but I enjoy that process also. So been doing that for a long time. And Alexa, yeah, you are welcome. Randy Hood from Arkansas. Let's see, did I miss anything? Oh, let me just back up. Okay, I'm going to back up. Don't want to miss the questions. CoolTube again. When you say spicing up the drums with the APIs and the kick and snare, only coming from the tape, is that API to SSL? Yeah, I just have APIs on the kick and snare, but just to add more top end because I don't know, they add some impact. Just and it works. Do you mix into the master bus? How do you balance the volume of tracks? Do you anchor the mix against the kick drum and vocals? I mean, Joel Weiss, if I'm saying that right. For me, the master bus is always set the same, so I just make the mix work within that. I kind of know where my parameters are as far as gain. When it feels like it's pushing too hard, I just pull all the faders down. I revise it down. So I think it's really good to get a great bus chain and just work with it, right? And have that as your de facto. So I know that was quick, but it's that simple. Tom, any tips on finding the pocket for vocal and sparse mixes? I find on piano ballads, I spend a lot of time chasing my tail on vocal level when there isn't a rhythm section. Well, yes, you got to match the vocals dynamic to the piano or whatever. But, you know, compression is your friend. CLA 76, Waves plugin, instant. That'll fix you right up. Roy Long, thanks you. I'm about to recalibrate my console, and that helps. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about calibrating the console. It's all about zero VU. It's a Pro Tools, minus 18, minus 16. I mean, just find something that you feel sounds right. So, hey, I'll say I have Ariana Grande fan. Hey, Chris, do you have a particular vocal chain? And if so, what is it in the box version? I mean, it's very simple. because I love a blue 1176 and I have a whole bunch of them over here, then I want to use my mix-up EQ into a 76, into an L1 limiter. I want to just start there, and that gives me a great start point. So okay, Tom Greenwood. So I hope that answers your question. Tom, also, do you have a go-to monitoring SPL when doing vocal rides? Yeah, super quiet. It's always the same level. It's just pretty quiet. I mean, the vocal rides, the lower the level, the better. So I hope that answers your question, Tom. So always keep a low level going. Axel, what tracks do you route to parallel compression? Usually drums. That's the only thing I run to parallel compression. Just the drums to get more snap. Sasha, when mixing analog, well, it's always analog. Do you use auxes, for example, a drum group, so you can put an EQ on the whole kit, or how would you accomplish that if you wanted to EQ the drums as a whole? I just use a parallel EQ for the whole drums to add. I EQ the drums all separate. Okay, I don't want to EQ them EQ them as a whole. That's what the parallel EQ does. It just adds a bit more brightness. So that's how I look at it, Sasha. I don't use auxes. The auxes are for reverbs. And even in the box, I would use sends for reverbs. And let's see. Tia Roba, have you tried mixing Atmos with your SSL like Bob Clearmountain? No, I don't want to run into all those problems. No, it's separate completely. Because I would rather do all the Atmos stuff completely in the box. Then there's less routing issues to happen. I feel that if I do the routing on the SSL, something's going to fail. It's from 1986. Look, I'm failing. So I want, if I make the mixes on I make my stems all on my regular stereo rig and bring them into Atmos, well, half the work is done. But that's a different conversation. Let's see. Let me just go back here. You guys are getting ahead of me. So we're past Sasha's question and the Bob Clearmount question. So James, thanks for doing this. Hope you look for an assistant recording and mixing. What do you look for in assistant recording and mixing? Well, that's a very good question. Okay, and it's very simple. What I look for an assistant is someone who listens, pays attention, and focuses on the job at hand and doesn't get distracted. And my assistant is probably the best in the business. It's impossible to beat. He knows what the process is here. And trust me, I do heavy lifting also. So I am not just letting him do all the work, okay? But an assistant has a lot of follow through to do and has to have a very good schedule on how to keep that process going all day long. So thanks for asking. Favorite preamp for vocals? Well, right now it's the Heritage, sitting right here. The Heritage HA73. I've done maybe 150 vocals on that. It's fantastic. That and a Bluey, my Bluey, and you got a great sound right off the bat. So Ariana Grande fan, hope that helps. Brian Lash just drummed on Annie Bosco. Okay, well, good. We'll be getting on your songs at some point soon here. Cool Tube, you said never stereo link. So I got the Bus Plus in the 4K setting on the 4K. Well, you know what, Cool Tube, on the Bus Plus, it's brand new. If you come up with a great setting, let me know, okay? I don't do I like the stereo balance to move around. So it's like dual mono for me. But doesn't mean that the stereo thing doesn't work. So have fun with that. It's really cool. I have the first one they made right here. I've tried it. I've tried a couple of mixes with it. Pretty cool. But I'm a creature of habit, so I stick with what works, and I'll spend more time with it. So I hope that answers your question there. I always see your dresser pumping on a snare. Is that a snare sample? Well, funny enough, and that's from Snap Screw. You got to remember, my compressors are always in the channel, okay? But they may not be engaged. And that's what you got to think about. The distressors are on 43 and 44, which is usually a snare sample and snare bottom, okay, sitting there. So whether I use it or not, I put it in, goes, is this helping or not, or I pull it out. So about 80% of the time, it's not in. So a lot of my compressors are in are on the channels, but not engaged. They're just they're there because that's where they work the best. That solves that problem. Leopera 1015 has a bedroom producer who mainly does mixing. If I could only get one piece of outboard gear, what would be your recommendation? Well, an SSL bus compressor, not the Bus Plus. Start with the original SSL bus compressor and use that. Use that, and that probably would help bump you up if you're going to use an analog piece of gear. So Randy Hood, I know you do rock mixes a lot, but do you do any hip hop, modern, R&B? Yeah, I do. You know, I do country and western. Okay, I do pop. I do not much hip hop. You got to remember, I come from Sugar Hill Records. I mixed rap records when they were first invented. Okay, and it was a different world back then. And yes, I do rap songs, not the hardcore, but I do some rap pop things. And you know what? A song is a song. And if you listen to music on the radio and you kind of know what the approaches are supposed to be. So I find there's no difference between going from a rock record to a pop record. A pop may just be more clean, drier, you know. But I like the variety. I like to go from, you know, from the heaviest thing to the lightest thing, just to break it up. Okay, that was Randy. So I hope that answers your question. There's no really approach differences, except, I mean, you're going to make the vocals louder maybe on the pop stuff and on the country stuff for sure. So Juan Nieva, what are your favorite Yamaha Rev 100 presets? Well, I don't have a Yamaha Rev 100. I have a Rev 1. You know, there's a percussion plate, sounds really good. There's a vocal plate, sounds really good. When you're using 6 or 7 reverbs, I just want to have the character of that reverb added in. So it's really up to your personal taste, really. Do you use parallel compression on vocals? No, I don't. I just have a parallel pair of faders, as I said earlier, just to raise the level. And that was from that was from, okay, we can go up here. Sorry. I jumped the gun. Oh, wow. All right. Let's see. You guys are getting, okay. That was from Benjamin. So hopefully that answers your question, Benjamin. Relaxing meditation channel. Whoa. Hey, Chris, when do you think it's useful to compress overheads? Well, if they're really boring. But remember, you compress the overheads, what are you going to get? Real swishy cymbals. You want to just kind of tap them, because remember, your cymbal impacts are going to come out. If you compress them, they're not going to rise above the snare drum. So the whole snare thing is, look at the big picture. What are the overheads doing, you know, and how do they sound? You got to remember, your 50% of your drum sound is from the overhead. So if you overcompress that, it's a mush pile. And people think I compress all the drums that hard. I really don't. Yo, following your last question, sometimes I turn off the master bus and I have like minus 15 dB of headroom, because since I mix with the master bus on, I balance my level with it on. No, keep your master bus on. I mean, that's, you know, that's the sound. So go with the sound of your mix right from the beginning. And then I have hit shaper. All right, hit shaper. Let's see how many hits you have. Do you find it more difficult mixing your own productions? How do you keep the distance? Oh, so hit shaper. Yeah. How do you keep the distance? Don't listen to it too much. Within all mixing, every listen is you're going downhill. The more you hear it, the more you hate it. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And on your own productions, I find that when I finally finish it, it's just about getting it to work and hoping I don't lose the excitement. But yeah, don't listen to it too much. Try to put it on the back burner and forget it for a while. I know it can be troubling. So the more times you spend, you know, the more times you spend on it, the harder it gets. So, and that was from Hit Shaper. I have Benny Diaz. The new Bad Flower sale is amazing. Fantastic mixes. Any chance you'll do a video about one of them on Mix with the Masters anytime soon? Any comments about those mixes? I didn't do them. Okay. So find out who did, see what he'll do. I did the first album, and I didn't think the second album really had great songs. So, but I wish him the best. and hope that I see him again. I said, Waro Andres, sorry, I can't pronounce your name properly. Do you have any kind of SPL average for mixing? I don't have a meter, but it's pretty quiet. You can hear the keyboard typing over it, so it's not that loud. And I have Brad, Atmos. How often are you mixing in Atmos? And when you do, what do you use for Atmos mastering? That's all new territory. And I'm doing minimal Atmos mixing. And Ted Jensen at Sterling, he's got the Atmos mastering all solved now. So it's all new. So it's coming together. Chubba, do you clip gain all tracks up close to zero or only the most important tracks? Are you aiming for balance in PT with all the faders at zero, or rather use console trim for balance? Well, in Pro Tools, since I'm using a big summing amp with 44 outputs, all the faders are at zero, and the clip gaining is all the leveling, okay? So you clip gain for level, 100%. And some sections, you may change it. You may build it in. But yes, I do all the clip gaining and all leveling, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it, because some signals are compressed, and if you clip gain up too high, it's going to be way too loud. So, but yes, that's what I would do, and then you have zero output on Pro Tools and do the balancing on the actual console. Hope that helps you, Chubba. Maxine Nicholas, what would you recommend using both software and hardware equipment at the same time? Like using outboard comp, outboard delay, and software EQ. I do that, okay? So your question about using EQs and Pro Tools, outboard, that's what I'm doing. Look over here. I combine all of it. So I have plugins in Pro Tools, I have plugins, I have outboard gear, I have analog. So I'm using analog and digital. So to me, that's the magic, is that I can use plugins and editing and do that all in Pro Tools, and it's a lifesaver. Because a lot of times, you got to remember, I want to use the console for automating and for feeling the music. So I can leave the EQs out and use EQ in Pro Tools, and boom, there you go. And then it's saved in the session. So, which helps. Okay, so I hope that helps you, Maxine. Moving on to CoolTube. Are the EQ controls under the display on your Sony flat? Oh, you mean the ZSM one? Yes, they are. Yeah, that's the boom box, of course. Yeah, just flat and just volumes all the way up. And I have a pot on the console to turn it on. So, and don't have it too far away or it doesn't sound good. And then Aria Grande fan, here we are again. Do you tend to use multiple reverbs for vocals or stick to one most of the time? I've seen people use the 3 reverb sends technique, but wanted to get your perspective. To be honest, a good vocal play with some slap and some delay really gets the job done most of the time. If you put too many reverbs on the vocal, then it's just swimming. So, so I moved to Axel. What do you think is the best way to train your ear to hear subtle changes? There's no way you're training your ear. The ears you come with are the ears that work. What trains your ear is experience and doing it over and over again and knowing what to listen for. Okay. I listen for the big picture and what makes that work. Okay. And that to me is that's the secret in the song, right? And you're like, well, your question's also, Axel, I'm not going to just throw you off here. This compressor versus that one. Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes I switch vocal compressors and I'm like, that one's too boxy or that one's too compressing too hard. And in the box, I'll experiment because I don't know what you used when you recorded. It's not like I get songs where they say, hey, here's the vocal chain. Then I would know like what I need to do. So I just get a vocal and I just make it sound the best I can. So, and then I have, I'm moving down the list here. So let's go back up here. Okay, there we go. I have Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm just trying to help you guys, guys and girls, help you on getting better at what you do. Love your stuff, Brian. Huge influence. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. You're my Bob. Bob. Okay, that is funny. You're my Bob. Rolf, do you do phase alignment by shifting a tracks on Pro Tools? Yes, sometimes with drums, of course, make sure they're in phase. And yes, that's what it's there for. Use the tools because you can see it, right? It's easy. So good question. Sasha, when doing the first rough mix and set levels, do you aim for specific numbers on kick? No, it's all feel. And to me, there's never a rough mix. There's always a mix. You make a mix and it's a mix in progress. So if you're producing a song, the first mix you make it as good as you can as a final, just mixing a bunch of elements, right? And then recall that mix and just add to it. So you're always starting from a good place. Ryan, how do you handle cymbal bleed in both the close mics and the room mics? Well, the more you compress, the worse it gets. So look at it that way. And remember, when you add samples to the drums, that lowers the cymbal bleed, doesn't it? So the more you compress the drums, the worse the cymbal bleed gets. But remember, if you have your snare drum and you get it sounding really good, there's bleed. Well, that's part of the sound. Work with it. You have to just work with it. It's really hard to get rid of it, but if you add a sample, then all of a sudden you have something that's adding a dry signal and get rid of the cymbals. So how's that answer? All right. So Eric says, do you ever mix in mono? Back when I was little, I did. But when you have a boombox behind you, over here where mine is, it's kind of in mono behind you because you don't have this big spread, right? So that's the best I can do with that is that mono thing. But if you listen to it mono on one speaker, it's not a bad thing. To balance it, it's a great way to start on making great records. So, Axel, and what do you think makes a mixing engineer successful? Your attitude. Okay. It's not how good you mix. It's your attitude and how you deal with people and how you learn and how you observe. You're eventually going to get better and better, but your bedside manner and how you communicate and how you deal with it and how you solve problems is more, about the job. That's what really gets it working. What bands or artists are you getting what bands or artists are getting you exited nowadays? T and Roba don't understand that. Try rephrasing that. Old Snap a Screw. I believe I've heard your brother says he pushes his overheads back to align with a snare. Yep, he does that. I do it occasionally myself, and he's really good at what he does. He's my brother. The killer mixer. Yoel Weiss, do you ever mix with headphones? No, never, ever. Just can't figure it out. Mixed by Adam. Okay. Hey, Chris, thanks for being such an inspiration and hero through the years. You're welcome. Appreciate that. What do you think of the current obsession kids have with saturation on everything, or do you think it'll sound dated soon? Well, remember, this is funny. That's a good question. Remember, we were using analog tape, and what did that do? It saturated. Okay, so analog tape had tape compression, and it's saturated, and I think really saturation helps you get more of an analog compression sound without just using straight compression. And trust me, I use a lot of saturation plugins, and I experiment with it, and they work really well. Because remember, analog added distortion, my console adds distortion, digital adds nothing. Okay, so I think it's a good thing. What will make it dated? I don't know. I think what makes it dated is if it's overly compressed. So, good question, mixed by Adam. Amanda, are you open to considering internships or opportunities to mentor female engineers? Always, okay, and it's always a possibility. You can find me at AES in New York. I'll be there hanging around. So if you come to that, we can talk more about that. But yes, it's always open. So, Eric, do you use a stereo spreader? If so, is it in parallel or do you insert it? When I do a parallel EQ on guitars, I do some spreading. Okay, and I can do that with a console. Let's see. I'm just making sure I don't miss anything. Have any of your Atmos mixes been released yet? A bunch of the recent releases on records I have all of them out. I don't know which ones are up. I'd have to look for them. So that's a good question. I'm not sure what's up, what's put out. That's up to the labels. I'm just a delivery boy. Alexei, in your Mix of the Master course of recording a band, you recorded Phil X's band at Capitol Studio. How did you choose studios to record at? And why Capitol? Why not Mix LA? Well, that's a good question. Why do I do recording in other studios when I have my own studio? Well, my live room is kind of like a museum of keyboards and gear, and it's going to transform more into recording. But Capitol has an 8068. They got great mics, and it's a great sounding room. So why not use the best room you can get into? And yet, in the future, I'll probably, my goal is to get my live room set so I can track bands in there, and then be able to have a whole rack of just the mic pre's just for that. So they're all separate. The consoles for just mixing, and I can capture all that stuff. So it's in the works, but God, is there enough time? Anyway, so Jordan, which album would you say was the most defining point in your career? Well, gee, with the amount of records I've done, I think when Living in America came out, it was such a big sound. And when Back in the High Life came out that Tommy and I did, that's another big sound. And then obviously American Idiots, people seem to like that record. So I guess those were defining. And I mean, Black Parade's pretty fucking cool too. So the list goes on. I mean, so it's a variety. So everyone has their own personal taste, right? So back to Charles. Are your kick and snare API EQ'd before the SSL? They can be, yes. There's actually EQs patched in the cross patch from Pro Tools to the console. Because API EQs are awesome. If I could have 48 of them, it would be awesome. My assistant would hate it because if I changed them, he'd want to kill me. But it's super cool. They're excellent and they're recallable. All right, Malsoft, God bless. Okay, same back to you. And Duck the Bass. Do you have experience with Sanken microphones? Fortunately, I do not. How do you store and keep up with recalls? Well, Austin 5, it's Austin's. It's easy. Since the 80s, I've mastered the recall thing. Okay. Console has a snapshot. It's on a floppy disk. It comes up on the screen. Takes my guys 10 or 15 minutes to tweak. The racks don't have anything changed. Everything's preset. You don't change anything except delay times and maybe an EQ, but it's very, very simple what's changed there. So let me get back to that. So the recalls we have down to a science. We have a full formula for paperwork and documentation. So it's been working for years now. So we can flip between 20 songs in one day, no problem. Hey, Chris, what? Okay, so I have Anna. Hey, Chris, what are your go-to mix bus plugins in the box or analog? Well, good question. Excuse me. The CLA Mixdown I like because it's mine. Also, the Abbey Road, it's the Abbey Road TG mix bus, which has EQ and a limiter built in and a spreader. That sounds really good too. So those are, and of course, if I didn't have any analog gear, the SSL bus compressor is still one of my favorites. Always works. And I hope that answers your question. But outside the box, it's a Focusrite Red and a Pultec, pair Pultec. So Rodrigo, in my studio, the drums overheads are always in phase with the bass drum toms and bottom snare mics, so it's easier to find the snare, flip the snare top. Is that correct? Because you always change the overheads. Well, there's no rhyme or reason to it because as long as when you solo the snare drum in the overheads and you flip the phase on the overheads and the snare gets deeper and more forward, that's right. Okay. So there's no secret to it, but you got to use your ears. All right, you cool tube. Yes, you are Bob. Are you using EQ into the reverb on the returns? I just EQ the returns of the reverbs. I don't EQ going in. Sometimes in Pro Tools I do, but here I don't. So if that's a quick question for you, cool tube. Let's see. I'm staying ahead, so I don't want to miss anybody's questions. Alexander, hey Chris, you often talk about Bob Clearmountain as an influence. What do you take what did you take from him for your work today? I mean, it's just how Bob was able to use this console and create magic with it. Um, Plus, how he hears drums and how he bounces. I mean, he really. I mean, one of the reasons one of the great reasons of mixing for me was to be, figure out how Bob mixed and just find my own path. I mean, he's just that guy. So it's hard to answer that. Let's move to Benjamin. What would you do? What would you do if you don't receive a room track for the drums? Well, we have reverb, and maybe the song doesn't need it. And I have samples that help that. So I have protocols and I have ways to work around it, but it all depends on the song, what you want. And remember, there's plugins that do rooms, like the IK Sunset Sound plugin is excellent to create a drum room, and the Ocean Wave drum room. I mean, so it's easy to do that. So Benjamin, I hope that works for you. Andrew Pinblot. Hey, in your tutorials, you don't do much notch filtering of bad frequency. Is that because the material is so well recorded, or does your assistant do this before your mix? No. We don't really notch filter. The only thing we notch filter is like a 60 cycle hum. I don't really do that. I've never come across a situation where it's like, whoa, very rarely I come across something where there's a harmonic or a vocal thing or a ride cymbal poking through and I have to kind of make a narrow dip, but that's 1 in 1,000. So, but good question. I know you may run across these things once in a while. Fix it in the mix with mic root or rut. When you're mixing, do you EQ and compress, limit the master bus? Well, as I said earlier, my mix bus is pretty fixed. It's a very simple compressor with an EQ after it. And I build everything into that because I find that's just a great finisher. So I don't do any limiting on my mix bus. So Brian Lash got my AWS 924. All right, welcome to SSL world. Getting things really dialed. Got the B2 bomber as well for the print. Is that the slate thing? Okay. Wondering if you have any experience with these consoles. Any insight on sweet spots, do's or don'ts? Well, I think I don't know what the B2 bomber is, but if it's an analog thing, that might be helpful. If you have a console in AWS, use the console compressor. Use that as your source. So there's no real do's or don'ts. Experimenting is how you get good. So hopefully that helps you. So greetings. I have Mateus. Greetings from Bolivia. Hey, what's happening down there? Got to get down there soon. How do you deal with the feeling of I can't find a way this mix sounds like I want, even knowing that if you send that mix, the artist would be happy anyway? Well, what you're saying is I can't find the way this mix sounds like I want. So what you're saying is I can't get the mix the way I want. The bottom line is you may be over processing all the channels, okay? Really start with trying to use the least amount of plugins and the least amount of stuff to make it work. And a lot of what makes a great mix is to get rid of all the crud. Go through all the instruments and get rid of all the crud and all the stuff and all the bad endings and the bad transitions and fix that. Look at the big picture. Get a balance up and see who's working and who's not. Because a lot of a great mix is that you might be over processing, where you need to do some cleanup work ahead of time, and then your processing will work. So think about that. And you're monitoring, like, how about your car stereo? Try that. Okay. So there's a lot of ways to make it work, but a lot of it's how you build, how you construct the building. If the foundation's all wobbly, yeah, you're gonna have trouble with the mix. But if you really focus on, okay, the drums are bad. Let me get a good sample on the kick. These mics aren't working. Okay, fix that. And the bass. Okay, the bass is really crappy. Let me get rid of all the leakage. And guitars or keyboards are noisy or messy. Just go through everything and clarify the parts. And whatever parts aren't working, ditch them. And take control of it. Don't let it control you. Okay, I hope that helps you in Bolivia. Let me move. I don't. Casing Finley. Can a mix be too wide? Yes, it can. If you overspread it, it will be a problem. So use the spreaders very minimal, just for a little bit, because you start spreading it too wide, then on the you play it on the iPhone, it's over. So yeah, it can be too wide. So I'm careful about that. But don't make it too narrow. I'm talking about left, right, center, great. But spreaders, that can be a problem. Or that plugin made by Joey Sturgis, the side widener. That's excellent. I recommend that. Side widener. You want to make something mono stereo without it being too wide? Boom. Joey Sturgis makes great stuff. Okay. And then we're back to Rolf. Do you use dynamic EQ in the box on any instrument or voice? It's all static EQ. I don't use the multi-band dynamic EQ at all. So maybe that's next generation stuff for me. Cool Tube. When I am in the mood to buy a new record, I go to the credits and look there what you did within the last months. Awesome, but guaranteed. Well, thank you for that. I hope that helps your mixing stuff. Also look for what Bob does. Tina Roba, sorry, I meant excited. Which bands or artists are you listening to nowadays? Well, that's so funny. I only listen to current music when it comes across my desk when I'm working on it. Sure, there's a handful of bands I see live I find exciting, like Aaron Jones or Steven Wilson. But I'm a prog rock guy, so prog rock. So I go see prog. I like Steven Wilson. I like Steve Hackett. I listen to anything that sounds like Genesis or Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin. I'm kind of in that frame of mind, right? When I want to listen to music. So so it's hard to get me to say, hey, here's the new latest and greatest. Usually I've worked on it. So at least sometimes. But thank you for rephrasing that. Benny Diaz, have you found anything that sounds similar to the VAC rack comps you have? No. Analog or digital? Well, no, because you got to remember those little two knobbers that you see over here, the gray guys. It's it's like an LA2A, right? So it's full. The knobs are stuck. That seems to work the best. That seems to be perfect. So yeah, they do one thing and they do it great, and they're great on vocals, great on background. So so that's Steve Furlot makes those, and yes, no, there's no plugin yet. But maybe there'll be a time where I make one with waves and we'll have some fun. Dreamer music. If you only had one reverb plugin to use in the box, what would it be? Now that's a tricky one. Right now, it's between the H-Verb and the Flex Verb, the H-Verb waves and the Flex Verb by SSL, because they're pretty radical on how far they can go. The Valhalla stuff, pretty simple. Okay, another one is good. But look, if you only had the D-Verb, I'm sure you can make that work. That's not even bad, and it's old. So it's really all about the song. So good question. Ryan Ainsworth on lead vocal. Do you ever use an LA2A before or after your 1176? I don't. I've done it where I just use an LA2A and it seems to work, but I haven't stacked them yet. I'll have to try that. JBCF, hi Chris, would you be available to speak at my school sometime in the future, the Recording Arts in San Diego? Well, I'm always up for speaking engagements. I do very well with them, but you have to find me at chrislordalge.com. Send me an email. I'm not cheap. I charge a lot of money to do one day. So, but I love to speak in front of people because I have a lot of really funny jokes. And the bigger the crowd, the more fun we have. Yo, how long? Here's a good question right here. Best question of the day. Yoel Weiss, how long does it take you to mix a song on average? Well, if we have it prepped and we've cleaned up the arrangement, it can go by pretty fast. Okay, it can go from an hour to 2. I find if it takes longer than that, then I haven't done my homework or prepped it enough. Then I find that if you've done your preparation enough, that really you get it in an hour or 2, it's going to be as good as it's going to get because you've already gone through all the files and sorted it all out. So sometimes the prep is an hour and then the mixing is an hour. So it all depends. If a band is in here or an artist in here and you're socializing, well, then it takes as long as they want because it's their music. So a lot of you'll be talking a lot. So I personally think that the longer it takes, the worse it gets. So good question. Snap a screw. Is your Pultec on stereo bus quite rare? No. I saw the values on the frequency knobs to be different than I've seen on most of the other models. Um, no, I have the original EQ one EQP 1S3s. I have two matched of that, and those are actually sitting on top. And I use two brand new mastering EQ, 1S3s that Pultec makes that are matched from the factory. So you can buy a brand new, and they sound great. So I recommend it. How many of your clients, musicians, do actually care about the gear you're using? Are there many gearheads among those? Thank you for your inspiration. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're all interested in what I use and they care about it. Do they care about it to make me try something else? Probably not. Uh, I just think they care about how the mix sounds or how their song sounds. But a lot of them, they do care. They do care about it. Okay, let's move down here. How do you, here is a very important one, Eric. I'm going to try to get your, we are at 11 o'clock now, so I'm going to try to get a few more of these done, but we'll go over a little bit if it's okay with Mix with the Masters, because I'm here to try to help you all. So let me go back up here. I just saw, okay. How many of your clients, okay, I passed that. So, okay, Eric, this is a very good question. How do you deal with the issue of client asking you to change something in the mix you feel would make it worse? Okay, it's very simple. If they want you to do something that you think is going to make it worse, show them what's going to make it worse. Give them an example of what they're doing is going to make it worse and find some middle ground. Remember, our job is to serve the artist and serve the music. So we have to be in a service frame of mind. But if we can show them that, hey, this is not going to help, and they're like, oh yeah, put it back. Sometimes that happens. So good question. So I'm just going to look at these last few here. So Cool Tube, what do you think about bass kick, sidechain compression? I mix all analog, and it was a nightmare to get this going, and now I'm not sure if I want it worth the effort. Probably not worth the effort. Do it in the box, okay? So sorry, I'm doing these answers quicker now. Witherfall, where would we send an inquiry about obtaining your audio wizardry services? ChrisLord-Alge.com. I have an email link there. Andy Paper Pigeon, how would you approach your gain staging when starting a mix and throughout the mix once running through plug and change? Well, you need to kind of normalize a bunch of your audio and start there. I mean, that's a longer answer than I'm giving you, but normalize stuff. It's transient to get the level up, and the same with vocals. Normalize all your vocals, and then maybe clip gain them all down 3. Then your plugins will see a good level. I have one where I can't even, your name is in Russian. How often do you have your mix rejected by an artist, and what's your protocol in such a situation? Thanks. I've never had that. I've never had rejection. Okay. I've had situations where I'm just not the right fit. And I think that they really love their rough, or they love others. They just love something else that I'm not doing. If you hire CLA, you kind of know what I'm doing. So if you've done your homework, you pick the right mixer. So I think that's, you'd be gracious and say, you know what, here's your money back. Move forward with people that like what you do. Andy Paper Pigeon, also, what are your top 3 things you constantly see or hear overdone or underdone that screams amateur mix? I would say over limiting the mix after the fact, over compressing everything. Try to keep it as open as possible. Hey, Edgar, I remember you from last weekend when I was down in Mexico. Very lightly, very encouraging, aspiring producer, mix engineer. Okay, I was at your master class, Edgar. Very enlightening. Would encourage every aspiring producer, mix engineer to try and reach for those workshops. Establishing rules now. Yes, you come to a workshop, we cover a lot more things than you think. Okay, it's not all about EQ. It's all about how you build your business. Jonas Fon, do you recommend using reference tracks for beginner mixers, or is it better to learn? No. Your answer is very simple. Use the reference tracks and A/B what you're doing and see, what you're doing wrong against that. It's a great way to start. Okay, Mateus, you're quite welcome. Snap a Screw, what was the most difficult mix you've done in the last couple of years? I mean, it all depends. I think the difficult ones are the ones where there's too much stuff on them, too many parts, and too many drum loops with percussion and this and that. The difficult mixes are because the productions are overproduced. Cool, bought the Bluey, and not only because it was awesome, I wanted to give back. I appreciate that because I learned so much from you. Got the CLA 10s and an amp and the plugins. Wow. All right, enjoy it. I hope it all works. I made this stuff for you guys. I don't make much money on it. I wanted to price it so it's inexpensive so you can afford it. Okay, I'm not greedy about money with that stuff. Makes no sense to get greedy because it makes sense to deliver great tools. Tom, do you find yourself returning to the same favorite frequencies when EQing? Yes, plus 8K is your friend. Yeah, and 1K on bass is always your friend. Do your converters output 24 dB levels? I think so, but ours are set for minus 16. So my RedNet system is set for minus 16. So how do you think about, Tom, how do you think about symmetry in the stereo field? For instance, you have two different guitar tones for left and right. Are you generally looking to even out the differences? Sometimes, a little bit on the EQ, but the differences make them poke and be interesting. I've tried Bob's plugins. They're pretty cool. David, Jonas, yeah, they're pretty cool. And he has some great presets. David Farrow, best mixing monitors. CLA 10s, NS 10s. They work. Okay, love them. Get used to them. They've spawned all the hits that we know. Are the Red 3 and Pultex patched before or after the master fader? It's in the insert. It's a pre-fader. It's always pre-fader because the master fader is just level after all that. So yeah, it's all pre-fader. Remember, your master fader, and this is very important. You don't want your master fader going up and it compresses more. So your master fader is the last thing. So that means all your processing, and that's just a level control, and your compression never changes with the fader level. Smart thing to do. Rob Vandermark, yes, I've noticed that you're using NS10 amps with covers instead of your new CLAs. Do they sound slightly different? Just sticking with what you know. You know what? You're right, Robert. My originals just sound a certain way with the covers. I'm used to that. I've had my CLA 10s up there. But you know what? I'm superstitious, and they don't even sound that different. But I find that the CLA 10s, because they're newer, are slightly brighter, and I kind of want a darker speaker. And the tissue paper, I don't know. I've gone back and forth on it, but I like the Voodoo. At home, I use my CLA 10s. In my other rooms, I have CLA 10s. So it's all good. Sound Village. Hi, Chris. Is it possible to order a mix from you? Well, or are you full for a lifetime? Never enough. So you go to my website, chrislord-alge.com, and if you have the money to pay, and if I like the song, we can do it. I definitely love the challenge of a new mix every day or 2 new mixes. So we're 10 minutes after here. So Steve, do you do a lot of vocal tuning for your clients? Does that add a lot of time to the project? Thank you. Steve, that's a very important question. Don't send me files that aren't tuned, okay? Because I will send it right back to you. The job as a producer is to tune the vocal, is to make it right. And I've gotten stuff that needs help, and I got to fix it. Am I happy about it? No. Do I do it? Yeah. Do I charge them? Yeah. If you're producing a record, it's your job that the vocals you deliver are approved by you and the vocalist. If the vocalists sound great, you don't have to tune it. Great. Well, if there's obviously some tuning stuff and you have auto tune on it, that ain't gonna work. You got to actually use Melodyne or something close to put it on a grid and go for it. So, very important. We never see you high passing outside of vocals, and with Pultex going too. Do you high pass anything in prep, or do you have insight on managing the bottom without filtering? Alex, good question. Look, I like bottom end, and I don't want to get rid of it. So I only high pass if it's really bad. acoustic guitar, some vocal stuff, you know, if a hi-hat's got some really bad crap on it, that, but generally I like bottom and I like to add it. Steven, there you go. No. Vocal tuning. Alex, I'm sorry, that was your question. Cool Tube, what temperature do you have your control room? 70 degrees, like it nice and cold. The crisper, the better, keeps you awake. Smoking Fudo, what do you think about freebies? Greetings from Italy. Well, freebies are test drives. If you want to get a client, say, hey, let me show you what I can do. When you're starting out, let me show you what I can do. Remember, it's free for now. If they use it, they pay. So if you're trying to get a new client or trying to show them what you do and they're a little apprehensive about paying you, do a freebie. It may be the door kicker. And I think you should all try it. Look, the only way you get clients is by doing mixes, and they're not all going to pay you on the first one. So jump in there. Moving forward, how revisions work in SeaWorld? Do you get revisions from your famous clients, or are they satisfied with the final mixes all the time? That's a good question. And I teach that in my classes about how you deal with it. But simply, if I send the mix out and they send a few notes in, like, and it's usually pretty simple, I send the new mix back with those notes attached saying request granted. So they see what I did and it's reflective on paper. All revisions, all the notes are got to all be on paper. Okay, I want a paper trail so there's no questions. And it's usually one or two revisions. And if they're here, it's a lot easier. But that's the game we're in. So that's how I deal with that. And I'm going to take a few more. So revisions. Say fabulous audio recipes. Do you have any visual guidelines for rough balancing the tracks using the meters on your console? I mean, no, there is nothing. It's hard to mix without hearing it. So, and yeah, you can throw stuff up and make it look a certain way and maybe it'll sound right. But sometimes that works. Eric, yes, you're quite welcome about sharing. Ashley, I am a fan of Stephen Wilson, Floyd Acceptor. Check out the band Order of Voices. Okay, I will. Yeah, I like the prog. I am happy with the prog. So last couple of questions before we call it quits. At what point do you know you are finished with the mix? You know what? I don't know. I know when it's done. To me, it's like I've solved the problems. It works. It's over. I don't second guess it. I'm confident. I know when it sounds finished. And I know when I've touched on to everything. Okay. And I just, I'll double check it, boombox, car if I have to. But at that point, I'm in good shape. And you should all be confident, not try to second guess yourself. Okay. How many mixes do you a week, and do you trust yourself to do a mix in one session and then send it back without a second check the day after? It all depends. You can do 3 or 4 mixes a day. It just depends on what the workload is. Why does the Pro Tools Master Fader operate pre-insert if it doesn't on large format consoles? That's a good question. I know that's a really good question, Brandon. RL Multimedia. At what level, roughly, do you print your mix off the console to send the master? I think it's minus 16. Not 100% sure. It might be minus 14 on the RMS. But at this point, I see a ton more questions coming through. We are at 11:15 now. I have to go and get to work here. So I appreciate all of you. Cool Tube, William, Brandon, all of you did, Samantha. Thank you guys for jumping on this today. We'll do another one real soon. But remember, with Mix with the Masters, I will be doing some seminars. I will be doing a week-long seminar. I don't really answer mix questions on my emails. My emails basically, hey, you want to organize a private seminar? You want me to do a mix for you? It's really that stuff. I've gotten a lot of stuff about interviews. Hey, will you do a mix critique? Because of the time is valuable, my mix critique stuff is something that I'm going to try to put on my website about, look, you want mix critiquing? We'll try to find a payment process that works. Because remember, I only have so many hours in the day, and I want to be fair about everyone. I don't want to rush through it. So all these questions that I'm answering, I'm trying to give you the best answers possible. But a lot of it will improve if we organize seminars or get involved in that, because we get into some really cool stuff. But remember, in what you're doing, it's all about your attitude and all about consistency and having a routine. Okay, get your cup of coffee in the morning. Get your situation set up. Organize it. Keep it simple. Think about, okay, I have some work to do today. If I'm going to clean up a session, I'm going to clean up a session and then do something else. So you stay fresh. Try to keep yourself fresh. Okay, and remember, I know Cool Tube, you're really trying to emulate my rig exactly, but try to also focus on just using your own will of mixing and making your own sound. Okay, I'm trying to encourage everybody out there to do your best you can every day and keeping your clients happy and getting more clients. Okay, and making this a job and also making this a career. So for your beginners, best of luck. For all you that have been around for a while, keep it going. And if you all come to AS, I'll see you there at the Mix with the Masters booth, um, and or La Fabrique. But any questions about that, go to their website. And any mixing inquiries or private stuff, come to me directly. So there will be a week-long one coming soon. Those are the best ones. I mean, make the trip down there. It's a blast. I can't stress it more that every question you're asking, every question you ask gets sorted there. Even the one days, we cover a lot. So anyway, you guys have great days mixing, and thank you for jumping on board. This is CLA signing off from Mix LA here in Tarzana, and have a great day and see you soon. So ciao for now.